I am having like a perfect hair day. Like it's completely straight. There's no hair sticking out in weird places. Like, oh my gosh. Okay, let's do this. Hello everyone. Welcome back to my booktube channel, Savvy Reads Books and Things. I am Savvy. Today I have my January TBR and I am super excited. Because I read 7 books in January, guys. I have not read that many books in a month in like 3 or 4 years. I swear. Like, oh my gosh. I think the last time I read that many books in a month, I read the entire Lux series in like 5 days. And then I read a couple other books. And that was it. Like, wow. I am... Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to start with the books I liked least and then move on from there. So the first book I want to talk about is a book that I gave 2 stars, and that is The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy by Mackenzie Lee. I didn't really enjoy this at all. I think I really just enjoyed the scenes of Percy and Monty that we got, and I enjoyed a little bit of, you know, the main character. What was the main character's name again? Wow. Okay. Yeah. That might tell you how much I enjoyed it. I literally forgot the sister who's the main character in this one. Wow. Okay. Anyways. So, basically we follow her after the adventures that take place in the first book. She's working in a bakery because she's trying to convince people for the present moment that she wants to be a doctor, but she keeps getting turned down, and eventually someone gives her the name of this person. She's like, oh, they're marrying my best friend, so I'm gonna go visit this person and convince my best friend to still kind of let me hang around her fiance and get this doctor to let me kind of be his assistant. Only the assistant job is basically just being secretary, and there's some other things. She ends up going on this adventure with someone else who has a separate agenda, and she's trying to figure out what this agenda is, thinking it might be murder, and then she ends up having kind of a separate adventure with her friend, or her ex-friend who's now engaged to the person she wants to work for. And then it ends, and I don't really want to spoil the ending, so spoiler sign right here. Dragons. Why? Why dragons? Why? This is a historical fiction novel, and I'm not saying that you can't have like a historical fiction fantasy novel, but it kind of comes out of left field. I mean, the science fiction aspect of the heart in the first one with The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, you know, I enjoyed that because it was kind of, you know, it was kind of already in like this Victorian steampunk era, and so the fact that we had like this steampunky science fiction in it didn't stray away from the story. Also, Monty and Percy were just freaking adorable. But yeah, I didn't enjoy this. I gave it 2 stars. So the next book I would like to talk about is We Should Hang Out Sometime by Josh Sinquist or whatever. I listened to this on audiobook. I really enjoyed hearing Josh narrate this and kind of being like, so this is what, you know, my life was like, and everything. I really enjoyed the perspective of him being kind of disabled, but like not really being like, hey, yeah, I'm disabled, and that's why I want to know what activities we're doing beforehand. It's more of like he didn't want to shed light on it. He didn't want to be a burden, and I relate to that in some ways, and I really enjoyed that aspect. As far as having basically the premise of this is he goes back, he looks over his life basically and all of the women he's kind of dated or thought he was dating, and then goes back to them, hangs out, and been like, so what happened to us? Why did this relationship fail? I enjoyed it while I was reading it, but it didn't really leave me with it didn't really leave me with more than that, so that's why I just gave it like a 3.5 stars ish. I didn't love it, but it was an enjoyable read, and I didn't hate it. The next book that I read are all 4s and 5 stars, guys. So I first want to talk about Sadie. I also listened to this on audiobook. This is by Courtney Summers, I believe. I've forgotten a little bit, and I listened to this on audiobook. And I highly recommend listening to this on audiobook because half of the book is kind of told in this podcast form, and it's so amazing listening to the audiobook and then listening to Sadie's narration, which of course isn't really done in podcast format. So basically we follow Sadie, and she's trying to get answers for the murder of her younger sister. And so she kind of leaves and disappears. And her kind of surrogate grandmother is kind of like, shit, can't have this happen. So I'm going to hire a private investigator to help look, and then I'm going to hire a reporter because the reporter actually is interested in the truth, and this reporter is kind of more of a podcast guy, so he tells the story through this podcast type format, and it's so gripping. We deal with a lot of issues, though. We do deal with rape and depression and drug abuse and physical abuse, so trigger warnings for that. But it's just, oh my gosh, it's so good. There were a couple things I kind of wanted done a little bit more, or that we could have delved more into. Kind of wanted it to be a little bit longer, I guess, just because I really wanted it to be more, which is kind of why it's just a little bit of a step down. It's kind of like a 4.25 stars. It's just, I enjoyed myself so much. I think like I listened to this in like 2 days. Next, I would like to talk about 2 books that are in the same series, and that is Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire. This is the first book in the Wayward Children series, and the third book, Beneath the Sugar Sky by Seanan McGuire. Yes, I don't have the second book up, and that is because as I was kind of told in a different booktube video by Murphy Napier, I'll leave her channel link down below, hopefully. The second book, Down Among the Sticks and Bones, is spoiled by this first book. So in this first book, we meet Jack and Jill, and their entire story is in Down Among the Sticks and Bones. But Jack and Jill kind of already explained their adventures and how they ended up being kicked out of their world. I adored these books. I think I gave them like 4.5 stars. Both of these books I finished in like less than 2 days each, which is like, you know, it's not that bad. I mean, these are novellas basically. They're under 200 pages, but just, so in this first book, we follow our main character who just arrives at Wayward school, basically, and it's run by this person who went to a nonsense world, and we have a whole bunch of children who all went from nonsense or virtuous or wicked worlds or logical worlds, and so they all kind of have different characteristics, and they're all kind of like, well, I can't hang out with these people because, you know, we're not going to get along. But we follow Nancy, and then as she's the new kid, and murders start happening, and people start disappearing, and people think it's her because she's the new kid, and it's a, oh yes. We also get some asexual representation in here, and I love it. I also really love the world that Nancy comes from. Like, I'm not saying I would belong to that world, but I'm very intrigued by the world that she comes from and the way it's described. And I love almost all of the characters. Well, technically I love even the bad ones. The beloved book of 2018 on BookTube, and that is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book, I gave 5 stars. Okay. Like, you know, it just... So we follow Evelyn Hugo, of course, and basically the whole premise stands. I'm gonna hold this right here because it's kind of gonna get heavy, because I might talk about this for a while. The whole premise of this novel is that Evelyn Hugo's this famous Hollywood actress. And like she's in her 70s. It's 2017. She's like in her 70s or 80s. And so she's like, you know what? I want my biography told. So she calls this magazine. It's like, I want this writer or no one. Comes, and they think that they're doing some little magazine puff piece. She's like, nope, you're writing my biography. And I'll tell you everything from basically when I was born to right now. I'll tell you all about my 7 husbands, why I married them, who I was most in love with, which one was my like best friend, and everything. And it was so good. So some husbands of hers, she kind of married out of love. Some she thought she loved. Some were basically used as plot devices in her career to get ahead. And it's just, I loved it so much. I mean, there were parts I didn't really love. There were times when the overarching romance, which, by the way, is a female-female romance. Not a spoiler, by the way. Not a freaking spoiler. I know that that's like this huge thing going around BookTube. Oh my gosh. If you say it's a female-female romance, if you say it's a male-male romance, that's a spoiler. This overarching romance. Sometimes I didn't love the character, and sometimes I really did. And sometimes I really loved Evelyn Hugo with this character, and sometimes I'm like, Evelyn Hugo, you really, 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 really need to be more empathetic of this person's concerns. And I'm just, yes, just, and then it broke my heart in so many different ways. Like, it broke my heart at the halfway point, it broke my heart. I don't cry a whole lot. So the last and final book that I read in the month of January, I technically finished it February 1st, but like it was only 50 pages, and it was only because I fell asleep in the middle of reading. So I'm counting it as finishing it in January, basically. And that is An Unkindness of Magicians by Kat Howard. It's not a complicated magic system, but it seems really complicated with how it's kind of written. And that's mainly because it throws you in the very, very heap of things, because it's like a revenge thriller and you don't really want to know what the twists are until like towards the end. And so about halfway through you're like, okay, I get it. I know how it's going to end. I understand the magic system. I understand who all the characters are now. And it didn't end the way I thought it was going to, but it ended really, really good. Oh my gosh. It went somewhere. This was top-notch magic novel. Like, I mean, you know, at the beginning, I wouldn't exactly say, like, it probably was like at a 3-star in the beginning, and then, you know, the last half was like a 5 or 6 star. It was something. But basically, we follow a whole bunch of these characters. They're all from different magic families, and every 20 years there's a turning, and basically, whoever's the head of house, they assign champions, and these champions kind of battle to see who the who the top magician is, and whoever that top magician is, that house will be the head of house for the unseen, the magical world, and they will have a say in how the magic is consumed and all these different rules. So we follow a bunch of these magic families, and then we also follow this new person, and no one knows who this new person is or what magical family they belong to. There's like some rumors going on about her. They're really kind of a little bit afraid of her because she seems to be more powerful than all of them, and they're like, what the hell? So yeah. And then we kind of follow them through this turning, and we kind of follow these characters as we kind of get to know how they use their magic. It's usually through their fingers and their hands. They'll twist the magic, spin it like thread, and perform it. And they can do anything from like lighting candles to healing their wounds to growing trees to doing this big illusion magic. Like, it is any type of magic. And the magic is so descriptive and so beautiful. The fight scenes, I will say the fight scenes, they weren't that long. Like, the challenges that these magicians go through, they're like over in like 2 pages, and I'm like, I would have enjoyed more of this, maybe a little less of the characters, but at the same time, we need all of this character description to tie us to all of the things that are going on, being like, oh, this is the person that this person's trying to find, but they don't know that this person exists, and oh, this is going that way, and that's going that way, because we follow like 50 different perspectives. Not 50, it's closer to like 7 or 8, but whatever. Anyways, I really enjoyed this, and I gave it like 5 stars as well. Anyways, that is all the books that I read in the month of January. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, you can give it a big like down below, and also hit that subscribe button to your right. I will see you guys next time in my next video. Goodbye!